G'day legends, g'day superstars. Peps back again with another 2023 season preview. We're heading down the Western Highway to the magnificent area we like to call Footscray, but the AFL called the Western Bulldogs Football Club. And I'll tell you what, I've reached far and wide over the Western area, and I have found two of the greatest, Nick and Matt from the Salty Bulldog, to have a chat about the club they are most passionate about, what happened in 2022, looking forward into 2023, and can they get back to premiership glory, or will they be biting the bone outside of September action? Gentlemen, welcome to Lace Out.
Chris, thank you. Pleasure to be a part of it.
All right, Matty, let's get straight into this. What happened in 2022? You go out in an elimination final, virtually 5 and a bit goals up. You're sitting back going, what we thought would never happen did happen. Was it just a freak occurrence, or could you see problems creeping into that game which got exposed on the biggest stage in the first week of finals?
Well, Chris, I reckon if you wanted to condense the entire campaign into a couple of hours of football, the elimination final was about as close as you're going to get to it. Yep, all the pieces were there in terms of everything that they needed on field. Everything was there for them to be successful and to challenge for the top honours. But there were massive flaws in the way that they set up, in the way that they approached their game, and in their ability to react and take initiative, not necessarily on the field, but certainly in the off-field, in the coach's box. I think it was a real problem throughout much of last year. And it showed in the final. You know, we had a great start. When we had things go our way, we looked a very good side. But when we had problems on the field and we had to navigate our way through them, we just had no answers, unfortunately. And it was something that we saw throughout the whole campaign, unfortunately.
You mentioned when we were just before Nick joined us on the preview, we were just having a bit of a chat. You mentioned literally we got plan A, and then just forget about the other 25 letters in the alphabet, because there's no plan B, C, D, or anything else after that. Nick, is that something that you agree with, or was just like once we got exposed, we didn't know how to shift, change gears, adjust to the way the game was being played?
It's a good topic, and it's a massive point of discussion, of course, with the Bulldogs. Not only, of course, in 2022, but in recent seasons gone by, definitely since the flag, and even elements of the 2021 season, despite how promising we were that year. What I could probably say is that I do still think at times that we do have, plan B and C and, all those letters down there, but I don't think it differentiates too much from what plan A is. It seems like we try to keep those supposed strengths and filter them down through the other remaining letters of that alphabet there. I make a comparison, though, to Geelong, of course, and when they play their particular brands of football and you see them trying to shift momentum within games or how they change themselves up, you can see a definitive shift in the style that they tend to play. Whereas with us, I think you still tend to see a lot of the kamikaze type brand of football, whether it is, of course, this wonderful handball club that apparently we are, and a lot of a dash and dare. But sometimes the handbrakes can get applied not only from other teams with their systems, but it seems like it's something that we ourselves forget to be able to apply it to try to match the tempo of where the game is heading. Yep. So we're either doing one or two things, I reckon, where we're either going 100 miles an hour, or it's literally we're full on going in reverse, the complete wrong direction, where we just aren't able to arrest that particular momentum. So, which is something that we used to be able to do a fair bit, at least during 2021, probably even, I'd say 2019, where I thought we were actually a pretty decent side that year, despite being eliminated in the first week of the finals.
Yeah.
Last year, I think Matt and I brought up many discussions where, regardless of what was going on, it was very akin to our 2017 and very akin to our 2020 seasons, where we were both exceptionally frustrated, regardless of the wins that were being, put out there. It's not often you're going to have, say, supporters or, particular fans say, 12 wins, you get into the finals and you'd still be saying, like, what on earth have we actually done for the entire season, and not be satisfied with it.
Well, you look at the season, and we're not going to go into it too much because we're looking at 2023. But it was an interesting season the way it planned out. You lost three out of your first 4 games. You then have a winning streak of 3. You then have the bye, and then you go win-win, loss-loss, win-win, loss-loss, win-win, loss. So based on that, you're going to lose to Melbourne in round 1 of 2023, which you don't want to hear that, and all the Melbourne people like myself would be very happy for. But that just shows that when you were on, and when you weren't, you got found out. And the stats showed that. You got caught out.
Not even just because you've got a good point there too, Chris. But it's not even just within those respective fixtures from week to week. And Matt alluded to it before. We got the whole shebang within one particular match, the elimination final. And you notice, of course, with the round 1 against the D's last season.
There's another game exactly the same.
Cop the first 4 goals. We kick the next 8, concede the next 6, kick the next couple, and concede the next 3. There was a lot of momentum shifts within. Not even just within, matches or halves, within quarters itself, games within games. And it was that ironic unpredictability that became very predictable with the way that we were, displaying our football across the entire course of the season. Like even the week later against Carlton too. And there's probably another dozen or so matches. I'm sure Matt and I could probably roll the tongue here, but that'll bring back some very traumatic memories because it was a very disappointing season.
It was disappointing. And when you look at your average winning margin was 34 points. So every time you won, it was 6 goals. But if you lost, it was 24 points or 4 goals. So you either won really well or you lose badly. And I say 4 goals is a pretty, the way that games are these days. If teams are lucky to kick 10 to 12 goals, like that's 4 goals these days is a bit of a hiding, if you don't mind me saying. But yeah, so you'd either be dealing it, like you said, you either go hard or other teams just found ways to go hard against you, and there wasn't sort of that middle ground where it was. You'd rather have it closer rather than having those extremities too, because it just leads to that unpredictability of how it goes.
And that backs up a lot about what Nick was saying with it being similar to 2017 and the 2020 campaigns. Both of those campaigns were really inconsistent football sides.
Yep.
And it was to a T what we were last year. And Nick was talking about earlier about how we were the episodes we were doing last year on the podcast. And every week we'd sit down, particularly after a loss, and it'd be the exact same things that we'd be talking about every week. And it goes back to what I was saying about a lack of plan A or a lack of plan B, rather, in that the problems that would really bite us throughout the year and prove very costly were consistent throughout the whole year.
Yep.
I think Nick will know this better than I do, but the defensive 50 to forward 50 transition, I think only Essendon were worse than us.
Yep, that sounds about right.
That's about right. There's no
being in comparison. There's no disrespect, but at the times for the personnel that the Bombers had and the game styles that they have, and the way that they probably transition to be in that particular end of the spectrum is nothing short of a disgrace for the personnel that we happen to to have it out in front of our hands right now. So it's a very different style of play that we're probably going to have to look to change up this season. Lost our wing options, got a bit more structural balance, I'd say, more to the list. So it should allow for particular opportunities for us to play a particular way that maybe allows us to get exposed less and maybe be a bit more daring in a different sense. But that's for the for the wizard, the maestro, of course, and the Luke Beveridge to ponder and figure out.
And I think you're right too. It was really run and gun the way that you played. Like you ranked 2nd for handballs, 4th for disposals, 5th for points, 4th for inside 50s, 1st for clearances. But then if you flip it around, you got outmarked by opponents. You got hit outs were almost non-existent from your perspective, and like you said, your rebounds as well too. So you'd be going one way, but sometimes you go so hard in attack that other teams, when they run it out, you've got nothing to sort of combat it. And then once they get a run on, football these days is all about speed, give me what I need. And unfortunately, if you don't have the people behind the ball, they're just going to run it through. So when it works, it works well.
Scores per inside 50 were both ways. Were huge. Like I was watching just the other day the Hawthorn game, the second one, the last game of the season.
Yep.
And I think at halftime in terms of scores per inside 50, bearing in mind the league average for goals per inside 50, I think is 20%. So you're backing yourself to get a goal.
About 24%, 24 to 26 most seasons.
Roughly a goal every 4 entries. I think our percentage at halftime was 14% for goals inside 50. And Hawthorn were up about close to 50%.
Yeah.
So both ways. And that sort of goes what you're saying. We're almost going too hard going forward. Yep. And it was hurting us on the break. And that was a problem all year. And I hope they've got to rectify it because that's a major concern. And you mentioned out marks as well. I think key forwards kicked 103 or 104 goals against us throughout the season. In the elimination final against Fremantle, key forwards combined for 4 goals just there. And that was about the average for the season. So key forward versus the Western Bulldogs, comfortable common medal favourite, I'd say, for 2023 if it carries on like that.
Fair enough. Well, let's have a look at 2023 because there's a lot to talk about, a lot to unpack because, like you said, there's been players coming in to add structure, but there's been players that have come out which, opens up some deficiencies, and we're going to have a look at that. But before we do, let's have a look at the Liz Smiley ski double-ups. Who you go twice for this year? So you've got Fremantle, Geelong, Greater Western Sydney, Hawthorn, Port Adelaide and Richmond twice, which if I look at that, that's not too bad in my opinion. I think Fremantle are very gettable. Geelong, well, once again...
just forfeit that across the season.
If it's a night game, the people down there, they don't like playing night games because the Climate wants them in before.
I couldn't trust us. So. Could never trust us. The fact that we had our best chance against the Cats a couple of seasons ago and were defeated by a kick from Gary Rowan of all people, that's it for me. That was pretty much the knife in the guts.
So certain he's in life. Death, taxes, and the Dogs drawing Geelong on the road. Every time we go down there,
well, that's us. When was the last time you played at Marvel? Geelong played you guys at Marvel.
Well, we had them the first time last year, but the point is we don't tend to just specifically play them solely at Marvel.
Yes,
a lot of the time, we thought we had escaped it last year, last fixture, didn't we, Matt? Round 21, no Geelong get it cut in here. Round 22, nothing down there. Round 23, of course, with the hopes in finals on the line, it's back down there, the highway.
Something like 1999 was the last time Collingwood played down there.
Yeah, that sounds
as Nick says, I've seen the Bulldogs lead down at Geelong after the final siren and we still got
lose.
Thank you very much, Zach Toohey. First of all, Melbourne away, St Kilda at home, Brisbane away, at home, and then Richmond away. So that's going to be an interesting first 4 rounds. And then the last 3 are Hawthorn away, West Coast at home, and Geelong. Funny enough, round 23.
There you go.
I hope we don't need a win on the last week of the season.
No, just don't do that. Just don't do a Carlton, whatever you do. And degree of difficulty, around about the 8th hardest draw. So when you finish 8th, you get the 8th hardest draw. That's okay. All right.
Yeah, about right.
Couple of things. Let's have a look at your drafting and your trading side of things because there were some positives to come out of it and obviously some negatives. I'd love to get your insight. The ends, the 2 big ones, the pillars at each end. You've finally got the guy, Batman, he is back. Liam Jones, after a year out, comes back. Hopefully will give Alex Keith that support that he's needed for goodness knows how long. And down the other end of the ground, which is a bit of a surprise, I couldn't figure out, so you might want to tell me why. Rory Lobb comes into that forward line, which if you think about it, it is pretty stacked, where you've got...
Which you don't say Norton, often with us, to be honest, don't you?
No, Norton, Bruce, Ugle-Hagan, Lobb, and Darcy. Well, now, there's 5. You're not going to be able to fit all 5 in. So you're probably going to say, well, Bruce isn't probably going to be a fixture of that, and Darcy will. So I'm leaving that one for you to have a chat to me about. But then on the other side of the coin, you lose Dunkley to the Brisbane Lions, your reigning best and fairest, and Lachie Hunter goes over to the D's as a wingman. And as you know, wingmen have become more and more important as the years have gone on as well too. So I'll leave it to you, gentlemen, to chat to us about both sides of it. So the positives coming in and obviously the negatives with the 2 going out. So whichever order you want to start with, I'll leave that one up to you.
I'll go with Rory Lobb because clearly the tall forwards is the big talking point. I have to say, when given that growing up, the key forwards leading the line were the likes of Jade Rawlings, Adam Morgan, and Travis Baird.
And Tim
Simon
Walsh. Can't
Minton
forget Tim
Connell.
Walsh.
Don't forget Simon Minton Connell.
Who else have
I'm
we got?
pretty happy.
Who else have we
Danny
got?
Delray.
Kingsley
No,
Hunter.
they were
Trent Bartlett.
before my
Kingsley
time.
Hunter. We could just
Aaron
spend all night
James is
talking
another
about
one. Jesse Bowles, Stephen Teller. Oh, geez, the list rolls on and on and on.
Alan Jakovic.
The
You really
point-
want to go back.
The point is, Chris, that we're pretty happy with the fact that we've got too many tall forwards rather than no one at
Yes.
all.
Yeah.
So
Yes, the VFL team will be very well stacked, as I might say that right now. I tell you.
So with the acquisition of Rory Lobb, I know a lot of people sort of look at the fact that we've got a lot of key forwards. He feels a really important need, and I'd say a bit of an understated need, as the forward/relief ruckman. Now,
Slash
Tim
decoy?
English is coming in, sorry?
Decoy?
I suppose something like that. So Tim English will be the number one ruckman throughout the course of the year, as he has been for much of the past few seasons.
And he was really good last year too. Like
He
it's almost-
was.
He's growing in that stature. And I think last year, the 2021 season,
Stephen Martin was what
Yep.
went around.
but English really took over last year. Really
The problem
took over.
is though, when English is resting either in the forward line or on the bench, your backup ruckman or your backup options of the ruck rather become Zane Cordy and Mitch Hannon, who for all
And
intents
Josh
purposes-
Shaki and Buku Karmasan on the odd occasion, Bailey Williams, if you really wanted to push it.
again, the
It's
point is,
a long way short of Lin Jong in 2016, I tell you.
so you talk about the hitouts being non-existent. So that's sort of part of it is that when English isn't rucking, there really isn't a ruckman. So that's what Rory Lobb will be predominantly as a forward. But when English is having a rest in the ruck, we're not compromised in terms of our ruck options. We've still got a competitive ruckman who in that position on the ground, and we're not having to sacrifice too much in the tall forward department because we've still got the likes of Aaron Norton.
The structure remains,
Down
which
there.
is essential. Too many times we've had Norton hoping to kick to Aaron Norton, but he can't get there, in a blink of an eye, can he now?
Oh,
That's the
Well,
issue.
Cody Waitman.
There was one
Cody
game
Wayman,
against
oh God.
There was one game against Port Adelaide earlier in the year where you would see Aaron Norton mark it on the wing.
Mhm.
He'd chip it 20 metres to half forward, and then the bloke who's taken the mark would have to wait for Aaron Norton to run back inside 50 so that he could be the kicking target.
Yeah.
That's not going to be a problem anymore because we've got Lobb and Youll Hagen down there now.
Yeah.
In terms of Liam Jones being down back, this is a huge need, and we've gone about it in the draft a bit. We might get to that a little later on.
Yeah.
But I mentioned earlier, 100 goals to key forwards. Jones could fill one of two needs, assuming he plays at his very best. As a lockdown defender or as an intercepting defender. In his last season at AFL level in 2021, he was, I don't have the exact numbers, but I think he was at least in the top 4 for spoils or defensive one-on-one losses in terms of key defenders. He was also in the top 4 for intercept possessions as well. So however the Dogs want to use him, they can deploy him in either role, and they've got themselves a winner. And really, when you think about it, given how poorly we were defensively last year, we need both an interceptor and a lockdown one-on-one. And the fact that
we get that all in one player, don't we? Then
Yeah, right. Yeah, because he was ranked 5th for intercepts per game. He was ranked number 7 for 1%ers, total intercepts as well too. So he does his 1% things, the smothers, the bumps, those sort of things. But then he's also able to stop the ball in flight, and then
the lowest.
put it back into your control.
What did he have? I think he had the best one-on-one defensive loss percentage in the 2021 season. I think that was from give or take. I think it was 104, 105 contests that he had, which was at least roughly double than what any Blues defender had at the time. Then I think our best one last season was Ryan Gardner. And we had Tim O'Brien sitting around 43% loss ratio. Cordy was around 60, which is out of this world in the worst possible way.
Well, let's also be a little bit honest about it, gentlemen. The ball wasn't going down. Oh, that's the other way around. The ball wasn't going down in their back line. It was going down a fair bit. Yeah.
It was going way too much.
I was going to say it wasn't going down. It wasn't going down Carlton's back line all that often. I realised actually it was. It was the other end that wasn't going.
That didn't help, to be fair, but it did show, of course, that amount of supply that Jones could still hold up for it, couldn't he? That's what was pleasing for them. And we also didn't have a top 5 intercept defender in the competition. Someone ranked in the top 5 intercept marks in the competition last season. And now we potentially,
tight, I reckon. Yeah,
indeed. we potentially could have two. You alluded to it before, Chris, and potentially freeing up Alex Keefe to do the role that he was meant to do when he was brought across 3 seasons ago. Not play as number one, to at least potentially slot in as the second or third even.
If you look at Geelong, who are the benchmark, their back six, all of them can win the ball back.
Yep.
All of them can win the ball back. And that's the way that the game has gone in the modern day, is that you can't expect to challenge for premierships unless you've got a defence that can win the ball back. Every team who wants to challenge for a premiership will have at least one. The best teams have two. I mean, you all know better than anyone Melbourne's defensive setup of May and Lever, both very good at winning the ball back. As I say, Geelong have the likes of Stewart. They've got Tui, who can win the ball backs. Sam Koning, who's turning into be a star. All capable of winning the ball back. And the Dogs need to follow that lead.
You need to have at least 3. You need to have, I know we've got Petty as there now, and he's grown into that role at virtually centre half back. But then you need to have those smaller ones to run the ball. And if you have a look at last year, the Geelong were the best at that. They had Zach Tui on one side, Cam Guthrie, I think it was on the other side for a certain amount of time as well too. So you've got the ones who can stop it.
Good footballer, isn't he? Very good footballer, Guthrie.
Very underrated. I think very underrated from a external perspective, but highly rated within Geelong. But we're here to talk about your
the AA squads, I'm pretty sure too. But yeah, he should have done a lot more, but yeah.
But here's the thing though. There's some really nice ins for you. But I've got to talk about when your best and fairest winner leaves, and it wasn't the first time he wanted to try and pull that lever. He tried to do it a couple of years ago and move over to Essendon. This time going up to the Western Bulldogs. Going up to the Brisbane Lions.
I wish he was come back.
How much of a hole, because I'm a little bit concerned, I must admit. So if you can help me sort of open this one up a little bit, but I'm a little bit concerned because means that somebody else has to step up into his role. And now you're missing an outside link man, which once again, I've said before that I think wingmen have become more and more important the way that games are being played now with that fast football. I think Lachie Hunter, just his ball coming into 50 to those forwards that we spoke about a bit earlier is going to be a bit of a hole. So I want to hear your thoughts on that as well too. And who's potentially going to step into that because I think it puts even more pressure on the Bont's shoulders.
Well, let's not beat about the bush. Dunkley's a huge loss. I look at everyone else in terms of the out list. I've missed any names. Help me out here. So Dunkley, Hunter, Zane Cordy, Josh Shackey, Lewis Butler, Mitch Wallis, Charlie Parker, Stephen Martin. So Dunkley's the only one that I think we're really going to miss next year. Now, Hunter's best is very good, and it makes such a big difference to the team. But I don't know whether Nick will agree with me fully on this. I don't think we've seen Hunter's best for 2 years now. So I don't think in terms of that regard, we're losing too much. He's best, yeah, but we haven't seen his best for quite a while now. The Dunkley departure is clearly massive, reigning best and fairest, very central to the Dogs' ability to extract the ball out of the middle. I had the theory that it might open the door for Mitch Wallis to try and reprise a midfield role. And the day after I came up with that idea, he got delisted.
Delisted. I was about to say, we're going to jump in and say it. No, he got delisted, which I thought was... Yeah, that was a tough one because a couple of years ago, he was your number one goal kicker.
Yeah. And then again, he goes to the tall forward.
Yes. The leading goal kicking curse. Who won our goal kicking last year? Norton. Oh, geez. Norton. What's going to happen this time?
We've got a theory here that pretty much I'd say for the last 6 years, the club's leading goal kicker the following season has either fallen off a cliff or never played again. So in so if we go from 2017, where Stringer and Picken tied for the club's goal kicking. Neither of them played for us again. In 2018, it was Billy Gowers, who might have played only a handful more games. In 2020, it was Mitch Wallis, who fell out of favour. 2019 was Sam Lloyd. He barely played after that. 2020 was Mitch Wallis. He barely played after that. 2021, it was Josh Bruce, who didn't. He's barely played since. And now
so there's a lot of concern for Aaron Norton.
A lot of concern.
Yeah, but we're a bit terrified.
He kicked 51 last year. And your next best was 36. So if you take those 51 out.
Yeah.
And the funny thing is, too, with the 36 goals, where are we considering playing Cody Waitman? Through the midfield. That's what we're doing, Dogs.
And this is a bugbear of mine. I'm going to bring it up with you right now because you brought his name up. This guy kicked 36-10 last year.
Yeah.
We don't get that. That's normally not for us. I can't believe that it was that accurate. Normally
why can't you just leave forward pockets as forward pockets? Why do they have to come into the midfield?
This isn't a Bulldogs thing, though. So I think they're trying to recreate what's happened with Tom Papley. Great goal kicker. They've chucked him into the midfield, and according as far as Sydney are concerned, he's doing really well for them there. So they want to keep him there. And I think when we complain about the lack of scoring and goals being such a rare commodity, when you've got one who can kick you 30 to 40 goals a year, why we're so quick to chuck them into the midfield.
And we've got other personnel that can play in those roles too. That's the thing.
But some people can play that type of football. Some players are just natural small forwards. I have to say, I'll pick out two of the best small forwards ever to play the game in the last 50 years. Cyril?
Yep.
Stevie Milne. Neither of those guys went into the midfield on a regular basis.
Neither did Eddie Betts too. Neither did Betts.
So why have we got this fascination of turning forward pockets into midfielders? I don't know whether it's to give more flexibility through the midfield, but if he goes in the midfield, where's those 36 goals going to come from? Because he's not going to be kicking them from outside of 50. Who's going to be at the foot of the pack? It's not going to be him. So I don't get it, and it makes it easier for oppositions because Waitman's not down there. Charlie Cameron, do you see him going in the midfield?
True. Good call. Good call on Cameron.
That's another one.
The only things I can generally think of here, lads, is more for the idea of creativity and the ability to cause a bit of chaos in that midfield division. That's something we don't tend to have a lot of. A lot of our midfielders now, it's a bit different because obviously Hunter's not there and we lose that gut running ability or defensive running ability that he used to provide. And Dunkley, of course, with his strength in the contest and being able to be one of the better defensive mids in the competition. So it seems like with this particular tact of Waitman and then obviously throwing in Toby McLean, as a rotating mid forward, it seems like the tactic we're trying to do is be a bit more chaotic and a bit more freewheeling, I think, at least for the time being, so they can at least work out what's the go. I know they're going to go consistent with, obviously Bonds, McRae, and Libba, and we know that's going to be the starting trio. And I still think they're going to probably throw Williams and Smith on the wings as well as Treloar. But in terms of not just the pace through the midfield, because we've seen Smith have that, we've seen Treloar have that, of course, but I think that those two still types, they're not the ones that you still want them being extracting the ball. It doesn't mean Waitman's going to be doing those roles in that sense, but those two players are more obviously for the burst, aren't they? And then I still probably think what we'll see is Waitman play a very similar role to what McLean does, and they'll be the two that will rotate small and mid in that sense.
Yeah.
Where it's pretty also very good super coach options for forward six, I'll tell you, to be honest. I've got to throw that out there. But I think that's pretty much what it's going to be more for. That idea for the creativity more than the other boys who are a lot more stronger winning the ball back. But who do they give the ball to other than Smith and Treloar, who are wide out?
But I know you said you tried to cause a bit of chaos for opposition teams.
Which is what Waitman can do down forward.
You know how you sometimes look, you're trying to get too smart for the sake of being smart?
Yeah.
It's like when you watch Who Wants to Be a Millionaire, you know the answer's C, but you don't want to choose C because it's so obvious you think you have to choose something. I feel sometimes teams do this where
pretty much.
Just go with what works and let the other mob worry about it. And then if it starts not going the way you are, then alter it. Don't just do it.
That's our conundrum right there. That's our conundrum right there. You just alluded to it perfectly. When things are going the way, it's fine, but we still, do makeshifts. And then when things aren't going our way, we still do the same. Well, at least it appears to be doing very similar things. What I was saying, plan is a replica of A and C is a replica of B, which is a replica of A. There's not a lot of distinct shift in the style as to what I was saying, like Geelong has. You can
plan B is to persist with plan
difference.
A.
Yes,
it does feel like
you don't have a full-out attack. You don't have a lock down for the next 5 minutes, get control, then go back. It just seems to be
pretty much
we'll keep going at 80, but we won't. We'll shift and adjust.
But when we see this team have the chance to think, it doesn't work, does it? We've seen when this team's had a chance to settle the ball. Matt and I and other friends that have attended games, we think these guys are taking too long to make their decisions, and we don't trust them when they're not playing on instinct, which is probably why they've got to be going at full 100% because that's when they are at their best, to be fair. Yep. They expose themselves so much more that way. But the other side of things is that they make themselves second guess. So it's for them. I don't think I've ever seen a team in the competition in this, the last few seasons where there's polar opposites in the contrast between their respective game styles, where one does work and it's this successful, but there's still lots of weaknesses to it. And then when there's a slight chink in the armor and it's like a whole damn wall has been broken through. I don't think I've seen a side that's been able to get exposed as regularly.
The only other one I think who was a little bit like that, when everything's going well, they look really good, but then if there's something that goes wrong, they look really bad. Essendon.
Yeah,
when they go, they can go.
But when it falls apart,
when they're being, it's like when they're being good, they're being really good. But when they're bad, they're really bad. And even Essendon supporters will tell you that the gap between their best and worst is.
I wouldn't say that there's someone that's gonna just fill the Dunkley void. It feels a little bit like they're trying to reinvent the midfield. So Nick has mentioned that the likes of Bailey Smith, Adam Treloar on the outside. We've even seen a lot of Caleb Daniel playing through the midfield,
which I'm actually pretty content with, to be honest. I think that's a good call.
So and another thing, which is a bit of a surprise to me, Jack McRae's been playing a bit off the half forward line during match simulation, which for someone who's averaged about a quarter of a goal over
600 possessions a game and
I still can't get over him being named as a dual position player for the 2017 season for Supercoach after kicking 2 goals the entire 2016 season.
Don't ask me how Supercoach works.
Bond kicked 25 or something, and he was named full-time mid. So working out
how your wife works out things is probably a lot easier than trying to work out Supercoach. Hey, can I pick out a couple of names? I want to talk about a couple of names that caught my eye last year and really took a big step. I'm going to start with you, Matt. He is the Ginger Ninja. He is related to AFL media royalty. But I thought last year Ed Richards just went whooshka. Like it sort of sat there for a while and he played okay. Like he caught your eye, but he went to a completely different level last year, and he finished with a top 10 in the best and fairest, which is nothing to sneeze at either.
Which we thought was a bit unders, didn't we?
Yeah. We thought he'd sort of push for top 5, but in the end, I think he finished around 8 or 9 mark in the end and spent a lot of the year, I think, outside the top 10 for the best and fairest. But anyway, starting to justify the reputation of the first round draft pick that he was back in 2017. A lot of people forget he was a first round draft pick, and he burst onto the scene. He played pretty much every game in his first 2 years. Then he started to drift, but he came back last year. He sort of found a bit of a role as a rebounding, undersized intercept defender. Seemed to get the balance between those two parts of his game and seemed to really finally get it together. I remember there was a lot of big raps on him during the preseason from fellow Bulldogs players as we sort of led towards the 2022 season that Ed Richards was the one to keep an eye on. I think he might have just played the 5 games in 2021. None of the 4
injury-related, of course.
Yeah, a couple of injuries in there as well.
Injury ruin, that is.
But it felt like a big year for him. And he delivered. He became one of the most reliable players for the Bulldogs coming out of the back line. And I think his influence in that defence has given Luke Beveridge and co the luxury of maybe moving a player like a Caleb Daniel further up the ground, that they've got back flankers sort of waiting in the wings that they can use to fill those roles. So I hope he kicks on. Again, I think he could still take his game up to at least another level or 2. But no, it was really good to see him improve as the year went on. And I still remember the match he had against the Suns. He must have taken 8 intercept marks or something like that. He was brilliant. I think he's going to be a really important part of the back line. I know they've tried him across wing and half forward in the last couple of seasons prior when things weren't really working for him. But it looks like they've gone back to where he started and where he showed so much promise as a teenager, which was off the back flank.
Yeah, and you have a look at his record. Like he jumped 5 possessions a game. He took an extra couple of marks a game. But you're right when you talk about his inside 50s. He virtually doubled his inside 50 statistics, but also his rebound 50s went up by a point as well too. So he wasn't just getting the ball out the 50. He was taking it down the ground and bringing it inside to your forwards as well too. But when your work rate goes up by 5 points a game, 5 possessions, he's working a hell of a lot harder, and you could see it last year. And that's what's going to happen when you get confidence. Confidence is just experience with feedback, and he gets experience, the feedback. Yep, I can actually do this, and that's just what's building his confidence as well too. So that was really awesome to see. And he's one of those players you look at and go, I like him. I like the cut of his jib. And I think a lot of Bulldog supporters would be happy to see him running around. Another one I have to bring up is who I thought really sort of came back to the player that he was a couple of years earlier. He sort of not drifted. He has had some knee issues, etc. But Tom Liberatore, it was just, I know there were games he just went back to what he did, back in the middle, nose to the grindstone, the extractor. He ended up with the second in the best and fairest, just behind Dunkley. And it was only 20 votes difference between him actually taking that out. That was an amazing return for him, considering a bit of the feedback that he copped from that 2021 grand final. If you remember, he was sort of not playing that sweeper role. You know what I'm talking about, Nick? I know, Nick, if you can see the video right here now, Nick is giving me a bit of, don't talk about it. But he copped a bit of grief.
Traumatic memories, that one.
Yeah. But he looked fitter. He looked like the old Libber. Like he had something to prove. And, yeah, I just thought his season last year was exceptional. He was almost that barometer for the team. When he played well, the team played well.
Look, you can take Bontempelli out of the side. You can take Norton out of the side. You can take Jack McRae out of the side. And it'll hurt and it'll suck, but they'll find a way around it. Take Libber out of the side and the whole thing falls apart. He's so crucial. And when he was ruled out of the final against Fremantle, and that I think that ultimately is what cost him the best and fairest, given those votes for that game were doubled for us. Yep. Once they took him out, once he was out of that preliminary final side, that was it. That was it. And even though the game sort of panned out the way we did going into it, we were saying, well, no, Libber, that's the one that you can't afford to lose. Yep. There's great players, there's maybe better players, but there are none more important than Tom Liberatore.
Yeah, and same sort of thing here. His numbers were better last year for his disposals, his marks. Tackles was pretty much on point from the year before. His goal assists virtually doubled in his output as well too. He's just a guy that you need to have a Tom Liberatore. You need to have somebody who's got a bit of grunt about themselves, who plays to the beat of his own drum. And yeah, I just love what he does. He's going to be a 200-game player for your club in, I think, first 5 rounds as well too. So, you consider what happened to him a number of seasons back to where he sort of worked himself back in. And like I said, when he did his knee in 2018, it was 15 games, it was 16 games. 2021, he got back to 25, so that full complement, but then sort of really pushed again next year. So that was really cool to see. And you're probably right. He may have been the difference between you getting over the line in that final last year, if he is that important from what you said.
Oh yeah, he's irreplaceable. I know he doesn't grab the headlines like a Bontempelli or a Norton.
Yep.
But there's no one on the list who comes close to doing the things that he does. He's such an integral part of the side. And you mentioned the knee injuries. There was a fear at the start of the 2020 season into 2019, not an ACL, but knee injuries, which put fear into the Bulldogs that he may never play again.
Yep.
After that point. And for him to have done what he's done then is a huge testament to his ability, his will, his powers of recovery, and all of those tattoos as well have probably played a part.
Well, remember, his dad came back from a ACL in 16 weeks. That's
negligence. That's negligence from everyone involved.
But
it's
that's
amazing,
the way he
isn't
did it.
it?
He iced it 2 hours, every 2 hours for that amount of time. He was a bundle of muscle, the little fella, Tom Liberatore, one of the best to ever play at the Dogs. Now, I have to ask you about, look, I'm not going to spend too much time on him because I know how good he is. Aaron Norton, freak, just love him. He's, every opposition supporter dreads the high ball coming into their forward 50 because you just know that the astronaut is going to fly. And I'm really hopeful that he gets that support from Lobb. He gets that support from Youll, that it just gives him the ability to not be double, triple teamed, because that's what sort of happened towards the end of the year. He was just getting...
Even at the start of the season too.
Yeah, because they knew that, well, outside of Norton and Waitman, you really weren't that dangerous from a forward line perspective. In the space of almost one season, you've almost doubled that potential firepower by having Youll come on in the back half of the season like he did last year and getting Lobb into there as well as Norton. gives you that extra bit of room to play with. And we mentioned that Sam Darcy kid, which I want your opinion on him because he looks like he's a completely different level. Matt is just rolling his eyes back. He's grabbed the tissues. He's just that excited about this guy. From what you've seen so far, where could he go? I know Ashcroft is the talk of the town for the rising star right now, but he's a massive chance.
That's a
Sam
very,
Darcy,
very good, interesting proposition, isn't he?
The days of a fully fit Sam Darcy running around for Footscray are already over. I'm going to make that call right now. We will not be seeing Sam Darcy run around for Footscray anymore when he's fit. He plays round one. He plays whenever he's 100% fit.
Yep.
And to say that about someone of his height, who this time 12 months ago was recovering from a fractured foot and wasn't doing any form of running until about round 9.
Yep.
To end up playing in a final because they wanted to play him in a final tells you a lot about how far he came in 12 months. Imagine what he could do because he had no semblance of a preseason. He's had a couple of minor sort of interruptions this time around. So he's already ahead of the 8 ball in that regard. He could be anything that they want him to be. He's probably, I reckon in 5 years' time, he'll be one of the best luxury players in the AFL.
Yeah, my big issue though with him is he's out of contract at the end of this year, and he'll probably be at another club.
And so it begins. Here we go again.
We're dealing it with Cozzy. We're dealing it with Cozzy, so we're all having our issues right there as well too. But he's just, I look at him and what he can do. He's just got so much raw ability and can actually play, which is the really you can see there's some kids you just look at and go, he's got it.
So I tell you, this is going to sound sacrilegious here, actually, in a different sense, because you've alluded to it a touch to me last season, Matt. And when we had a chat with Sam Darcy too, he said he saw himself more as a forward, didn't he? Now, I'm happy to see him definitely play up front. He and Lobb would be a very, very good pairing. And I'm not saying for this season, but I can see it at least potentially next season, most likely the following year after. So 2025, I could definitely see the idea of Darcy and Youll over there. My question is, what I'm wondering, you alluded to it earlier last season where Norton, and I said that to you too, he's got a lot of good forward traits. He still doesn't play like a forward, does he? He's got lots of very fine forward traits, but doesn't play like a natural forward. So does that allow the idea for him to then go back later? I'm not saying to do it now. I'm not saying to do it now because I'm a big fan of him up front because he's kicked 100 goals in the last 2 seasons combined, which is not often for us to have a marking target.
A century goal kicker.
Yeah, that'd be nice. We wouldn't want a century goal kicker. Yeah, we'll see that.
Do with another one.
He'll be 100 goals.
It'll never happen
probably,
again.
but not in this day and age. But the question, I think, that because Darcy, of that luxury that he has, and the fact is, I think he's too talented to play down back as an interceptor, and he does have that gravitational pull for the high ball, for instance, something that Norton doesn't have. Ironically, for Norton's strengths, he's not a proper one-on-one type player. He's a pack marker, but Darcy's got that other elements. Getting it at the highest point, something that Lobb can do there. And then you have Jamara being as that hit-up target. I'm thinking that it allows that flexibility to fit in these other pieces of the puzzle for Norton to float maybe 5 or 10 minutes every quarter to play down back in that sense. And you might see us go one defender short. It might only be 2 of Keith Jones and Gardner, for instance, which is where Norton can go up and back in that sense. And you can play that extra forward up front.
You know how you said to us earlier on there needs to be a plan B? I deep down think he could be that plan B where he goes, all right, we need to stop the flow and we need someone to intercept, throw him down. Sometimes you just need to cool the game down and to get it back on even Steven terms. That might be an option because he was magnificent at centre halfback, but due to necessity, you put him down forward.
And he's been incredible up forward.
Now it's not out of necessity because you've got options.
Thank you. There you go. Necessity. Flexibility because you need to, in these certain situations, but now the opportunity has arisen. That doesn't mean, can the idea of forward Norton, but now there are those opportunities to see what can be done on both ends of the ground. Okay. I'm still saying 80% forward, but yeah.
Ryan Gardner was on air a couple of weeks ago and he was talking about Sam Darcy. And he was saying that they were playing match simulations that were for 40 minutes. And Sam Darcy was taking 5 or 6 intercept marks in that period of time. So we're not even talking a half of football. Now, whether that says more about how brilliant Sam Darcy is or about how terrible we are at kicking inside 50 still remains to be seen. I'd be fine with Darcy playing as an interceptor now because I think that's the one area that's a necessity that we need to sort of fill a gap in now in terms of an on-field sense, but it's also going to be easiest to integrate him into the side. I don't want him being the main focal point up forward just yet. I don't think he's quite ready for that. Clearly, and we saw it at times in a few games he played the AFL last year, and certainly in the VFL, that he's capable of intercepting the ball. He's already got a bit of experience with it at the level. He doesn't necessarily need to worry about an opponent all the time. He doesn't need to worry about an opponent trying to knock him off the ball every time. He's just got to go see ball, get ball. We know he can do it, and I think it's going to be the easiest way to integrate him into the side. We know clearly he's very good at it, and we need someone to fill that role. So I'm fine with Darcy down back. I've got a theory in a couple of years' time that English will leave via free agency to go back to WA at the end of next year, and then Darcy becomes that ruck forward option. I wouldn't mind that.
We got burnt by that last year, and we might get burnt by it again too. So my theory is just don't draft people outside of your own state.
it's a good way of going about it.
Seriously, if they're 4 hours away, don't worry about it. Just stick to 80. Hobart, Adelaide, Sydney, or Brisbane. Outside of
Darcy, but on Darcy, he'll be assuming he stays fit, he could be absolutely anything.
All right, Matty, Nick, I reckon the listeners right now are getting really excited because we're going to get talking about potential finishes and that sort of stuff. But I have one question that I have to ask, and it'd be negligent if I don't at this particular moment in time. When he first came to the club, he was seen as a bit of a where did that come from? Took you to a flag. And then sort of since then, rumblings inside, outside, you hear, rumour, innuendo, etc. Luke Beveridge, where do you think he's going to go? Has the surfer boy on his last set of waves at the club? Or is he at the moment just paddling out to even a bigger set that he's going to be able to ride to September glory?
Nick, do you want to go first, Nick, or do you need to think about it for a bit?
No, I think I'll take the reins here and see where this little journey takes me. Actually, also while we're at it, look, personally, I think we need to see less Batista and less Fidel Castro that he portrayed last season, and as you say, bring back the surfer boy, which is a lot more free-spirited Beveridge, and it seems to be that case where last year he looked very strung up at times during the season. A lot of frustration, probably internally, with certain personnel issues, certain things going on within the club, and different troubles that that can only get brought up probably within the four walls itself. But I probably think he's toned down a little bit now here. And of course, who was that acquisition that we brought in for the coaching again, Matt? Refresh my mind, please.
Brendan Lade.
Thank you, Brendan Lade from St Kilda there, and he was definitely headhunted for these particular roles to be able to provide a bit of assistance to the senior coach, not to say or to challenge him, make him accountable in that sense, but to probably add a couple of refreshing ideas every now and then. Now, it is a bit interesting to see, that he's coming from, say, St Kilda, and who haven't had the best half a dozen, 10 or so years in this stretch. But there's a lot of people within the competition that rate Brendan Lade exceptionally highly, and we're no doubt putting out their, checkbooks to bring him across. So very happy to see that happen there. And it's these types of personnel which no doubt probably will assist with the recent departures that we've had from the 2021 season, of course, and Stephen King and Ash Hansen, then, of course, Joel Corey in 2020, and we haven't been able to replace those guys. So it's nice to actually have some coaching personnel come in, which eases the burden on Luke Beveridge, who's probably had to take on a lot of particular roles at this point in time. It's probably even similar to what Rodney Eade had to do in 2007 before we started bringing in particular, again, administrative staff that would focus on other things and leave, the coach to be the coach.
Maybe him to do the coaching part?
Yes, that would be ideal instead of all the other.
That'd be a pretty good idea, wouldn't it, to let the coach just coach?
Yes, and let the forwards.
It does help.
Let the forwards play forward too while we're at it. But we'll see. But No, look, I still think there's a lot still to go with Beveridge, and this piece of the puzzle isn't yet complete because obviously he's got another couple more years in his contract, was renewed during the off-season, so the club still feels like there's a little bit left to tap into here, that sense of unfinished business. And this team is, of course, now it's fully 100% Beveridge's list. In the last 4 or so seasons, this list has been moulded and crafted by, his list management team, of course, and Sam Power, the directions that he wants to, or the players that he wants to bring in, of course, for Beveridge, and the style of play. That pretty much, that 2016 remnant of the side is pretty much non-existent now. There's only probably five people left, 5 players left, 6 blokes left on that side across the board.
Yeah.
I think this is definitely the roll of the dice, and these are the 2 years that obviously something's got to give here. And
what do you reckon, mate?
I don't know.
You're the same as Nick. Are you agreeing with Nick, or are you looking at? Are you not as optimistic? Very optimistic.
It's going to go one of 2 ways. It's going to go literally straight to a flag, or right to the blinking bottom of the ocean here. I don't know.
Let's be fair, because I was very vocal about this last year. Luke Beveridge has done a lot right.
Don't get me wrong. He gave Tom Morris a beautiful blast after the first game.
That was an exceptional blast.
That was exceptional. Like, I was driving home from that game and hold on, radio stopper, listen to the spray he's given, and then we realised why.
He's done a lot right. So won a premiership, took us very close to another one. Finals in 6 of the past 8 seasons. He's done a lot right as a coach. He's the most successful coach the Dogs have ever had in terms of wins and win rate and premierships and all that sort of stuff.
And finals and whatnot, yep.
Yeah. So let's not disregard all the good that he has done. However, and this goes back to the Plan A, Plan B discussion we were having earlier. There are shortcomings in his approach as a coach that have held him back, and it's the reluctance to be able to adapt and to make changes when needed. So I talked to you before we went on air. I'm not sure if I've mentioned it since. Aaron Norton last year had to do the bulk of the forward work on his own for 2/3 of the year until Jamari Youll came around late in the season. Norton being double teamed, triple teamed by about round 19, round 20. He was absolutely exhausted, Norton, because he'd been carrying the load on his own for the whole season, not given any sort of consistent support, knowing full well that they weren't going to have Josh Bruce for that whole time.
That's what the concern is, definitely. Yeah. That was really puzzling, actually, wasn't it?
Not turning to any other options. They had Youll, they had Josh Shackey. They barely gave him a go in the forward line. They had Tim English, who could play as a forward, but they chose not to go with that option. They chose to just keep English in the ruck. It was a real concern. And I think that's just one example of the regular persistence that we see with Beveridge. Even when things aren't working out, there's no there's no willingness to try and change things and adapt. And that's certainly held him back. And I think when I look at we can say 6 finals in 6 of the last 8 years. We've only won finals in 2 years since he's been in charge, 2016 and 2021. So that's all really that time. So in 8 seasons,
other seasons too, definitely missed opportunities.
So in 6,
you had a couple. That one against St Kilda, that elimination final against St Kilda was a real stinger.
So you can say in 6 of the 8 years we've played finals, but equally so in 6 of the 8 years we haven't won a final.
Yeah.
So when I look at Beveridge's coaching tenure to so far, I say, what's the exception and what's the rule? And the exception is playing brilliant football, and the rule is not doing enough and not being able or willing to sort of make changes to try and adapt along the way. So I personally, when I found out about the news that Beveridge had re-signed, it surprised me a bit. Were it up to me, I would have said, well, look, you've had a very disappointing season last year. Let's just see how at least the first part of 2023 plays out, and then we'll make a decision. Now, clearly the Dogs feel that he's the right man. And look, as I say, he's done a lot right when he's been at the club. So I understand why they've gone down that path. But I feel it was a bit early to make that call. It means that the next couple of years are going to be huge for Luke Beveridge. I know that they've done, you can do all the sort of the puff pieces that you want about how he's mellowed out this season and he's learnt from his mistakes. I know he did a big interview with Mark Robinson after he signed. But until I see something on field, until I see those changes and that ability to adapt on field, they're all just words.
Yeah.
I need to see something
You
before.
never know. They
I
might
get
do a
on
Brett
board.
Ratton and just get rid of him and bring in Rodney Eade. Bring him back to the club. You never know. Things might happen.
What's Brendan McCartney doing these days, Nick?
Oh, don't get me started. He is an absolute gem. Hey, as a development coach, one of the best. And I'll leave it at that. Hey,
Can't challenge that part there, though.
we are going to have a quick chat. I want to hear it from you guys. So I might start with you, Maddie, on this one. From the AFL perspective, so we're taking our Western Bulldogs lens off and we're just looking at the league as an entirety. All right. Who do you see as teams that are going to rise this year? Now, once again, it can be from the bottom part of the ladder. It can be teams within the 8. It can be teams in the top 4 going up or making that next step. Who do you see taking the climb? And, Nick, I'm going to then hand it over to you, and I want you to tell me who do you think are going to be the sliders? So which teams do you think are actually going to go backwards in 2023? I'll start with you, Matt.
I don't know whether this is a big call or not. I see North Melbourne making a big climb up the ladder this season. I know it's not exactly much further for them to fall.
Yep.
But I just think they've
VFA, VFL.
Do we have relegation
Eastern
in place this year?
District Football League Division 2? Maybe.
Maybe. Well, I mean, they've won 9 games in the last 3 years, or 8.5 games, or something.
We've all been there. We've all been there.
Yeah, no, we've all. Yeah, no, I remember what it feels like. It's not much fun at all. I just think, well, clearly, Alistair Clarkson's going to make a big difference just due to the fact that he is who he is, and the pedigree that he has, and the success that he has had over his time at Hawthorn. I think their list has improved. Contrary to a lot of what people think, I think the trade, the Horn Francis one, the mega deal, was actually really smart bit of business for North Melbourne. So they picked one. If Aaron Cadman wasn't in their top 2 or 3 on their wish list, it makes sense for them to instead let the Giants have a free reign at him. And instead of getting 1 player on their wish list, they end up getting 2.
Yeah, I reckon they had that conversation with him and said, look, you take Cadman, give us 2 and 3, and that's it. We win,
I reckon
that's it.
So we've turned one good talent into 2. So
Sounds
I think
like draft day with Kevin Costner. They took 1 draft pick, turned it into 3.
I think that. So I think that was
still got to
really
watch that. I tell you, still got to watch that.
It's a ripper.
And from what I'm saying, from what I'm hearing about North Melbourne's training over the off season, it looks like a very different style of play that they're going with, and I can only see that being a good thing for North Melbourne and their fans. So I see that. Well, look, full disclaimer, I'm not suggesting that they're going to crack into the top 8, but I don't think we're going to see them down the lower trenches of the ladder this year. I think we're going to see a reasonable climb from them.
I'll tell you what, I drove past Arden Street on the weekend and I couldn't see the oval. The amount of supporters watching the game, it was 3 or 4 deep. So there is a buzz around this club at the moment, and I hope them, because regardless of if it's North Melbourne, and I call them North Melbourne because that's who they are, we don't want clubs sitting at the bottom for their supporters. We've all been there. My club's been crap at times. Your club's been crap at times. You know, every club in the league has been crap
fun.
At one stage. It's no fun. It's no fun. All right. So I think it's been a great decision. And yeah, regardless of what's happened previously, we're not going to go into that because that's not a time and a place. I really do hope that they're going to climb as well too. Do you have another one that you think that might be climbing up the ranks for 2023?
Climbing up the ranks. Oh, I'd like to say we climb up from 8.
Yeah, you can say yourself.
I'm not entirely sure whether that will happen though. I mean, Carlton are another one that really should climb up the ladder.
They should.
I mean, they should. They should.
They should have done it last year.
They did. Well, they were in the top 4 halfway during the year, so we know that they have the ability to do it. You're not in the top 4 halfway during the year by fluke. You're in the top 4 because you're a good side.
Do you know they're the only team in AFL VFL history to be in the 8 for the entire season and then lose and drop out in the last round?
And you know that they've done it twice?
They've done it twice.
They did it in 1944 as well.
Oh, all right then. Okay.
Against
I'm taking you to the casino, Matt. I'm taking you to the casino.
And would you believe it?
Yep.
It was Footscray who leapfrogged them.
Yeah, good on them. All the good stuff happens at the Whitten Oval. because who remembers 1987 when the D's beat you down there and Hawthorn beat Geelong down and we made the finals? We gave Robbie Flower a chance to play finals. So thank you very much. So you're going with North to be a climber, and you're also going with Carlton to be a climber.
Yeah. It's a tricky league to get a read of
at the moment
season.
It is.
Yeah, but I'd say they'd be my two.
All right, Nick, give it to me short and sweet, Shirley Temple style. Who is going to be sliding down the ladder this season?
I'm really interested to see if Nick says the team that I've got in my head.
It's a very, very tricky one, I reckon. But what I'm probably reckoning here for teams that will slide down the ladder, what's my limits on the teams? Is it 2 or 3? How many can I go?
I'll leave it up to you. If you give me 3 quick ones,
let's go. All right, let's go through it.
You can say what.
Teams that I've got sliding down the ladder at this point in time, I've got the Saints falling a bit lower at the moment. Still very much unconvinced, of course, with how this particular rebuild of the list has gone through. Yep. I can't believe I'm going to quote this, but I think ironically David King summed it up. It's a list that's trying to be built to play finals, not to win a premiership. And in that sense of case, it's not really showing the ambition.
Okay. Yep,
that's a bit strange, but I would be stating those things, and I've said it for a number of years too.
They feel like they're in the friend zone, aren't they?
Pretty much.
They're not going to get much action. They're not going to get deep in. They're just going to be around the periphery of the 8.
Pretty much. Second team, I've also got the Port Adelaide Football Club as well, sliding a bit lower down. Still, again, not at all. Still not convinced on them regardless.
That's the first time in all the previews, and I think this is number 11 or 12 that I'm up to, and no one has said Port Adelaide. A lot of them have said Port to go up.
I still see a team that's, for the most part, since 2014, only played, 1 or 2 final series in that time. They've embarrassed themselves in both of them, give or take, in moments that they've had to clutch, bar the 2020 season. But even then, they weren't really a minor premier standard in that sense.
A spade, Nick. Jeez.
Yep, not for me. Ports, still yet to be convinced of them for a number of years. Let's just go find a team in the top 8, actually, a team that should slide, or at least history says they should slide, but I highly doubt that nonetheless. I'm really, really interested to see what happens of the Swans. I don't think they will fall. I don't believe they'll fall, but history says that they will. For teams that cop it in a grand final, and obviously we scraped in by the skin of our teeth, didn't we?
Yeah.
So, but then those sides don't happen to win a final, and history has backed that up for a number of years.
A lot of them miss finals.
A lot of them miss finals or not win a final.
Melbourne in 2000, Collingwood in 2003, Brisbane 2004, Port Adelaide 2007, St Kilda 2010, Sydney 2014, West Coast 2015, Adelaide 2017, Giants 2019, Bulldogs 2021. All the following season have either failed to win a final or missed the finals entirely.
Did you have that off the top of your head, or did you have that written down?
We've discussed this before.
But this is it's almost second language to us. I tell you, Chris, this type of stuff.
History will tell you that if you get beaten convincingly in a grand final, you won't win a final the following season.
No, I agree. It's
the I suppose semi outlier to that one was Sydney in 2014. The following season, they did make the top 4, but they went out in straight sets.
Sam Stozer, baby. Sam Stozer.
Oh, no. I've got one question, though, for you, just in a different sense. 24 of the last 28 final series, a team from the bottom 4 has leapt up into the top 8, and I'm pretty confident sure it's also the top 4. Do you see anyone currently from last year's bottom 4 that is actually a legitimate chance to do that?
Let me have a look at...
Is there anything to keep that record going? 24 the last 28 years.
Last year's bottom 4 was Bombers, Giants, Eagles, Kangaroos.
The Giants have to be the most likely...
No,
Can any of them play finals
only
in any way,
I can
shape,
see
or
them
form?
maybe scraping in is the Eagles. And the only reason why I say the Eagles is because last year they were just decimated injuries-wise. They're going to have a full preseason, a full fit preseason, and they're still going to play 11 games at home. Sorry.
The House of Pain returns.
13. They've still got 13 games at home because of the 2
times
what
up
are they
with Fremantle.
Yep.
It'd be one hell of a turnaround, though, from 2
It would be a
wins
hell of a
to
turnaround,
finals.
but
they did it in 2010 to 2011, didn't they?
hey,
That's
everybody
very
can
true,
do it. All right, gentlemen. Last question before we wrap this bad boy up is simply this: who is going to take out the 2023 flag? And you can have a maximum of three teams, because sometimes it's hard to do.
Hard to leave.
What
out
have you
the
got here,
Bulldogs. I've got to put the Bulldogs in there.
You can put the Bulldogs in. You don't have to put the Bulldogs in, but put the Bulldogs in.
No. Well, every year I've got to back them in that they can do it somehow.
Yep. So Matty's going Bulldogs. Who else?
I know a lot of people don't rate them and reckon they'll fall off. I'm not sure how many people have said this in your preview so far.
Mm-hmm.
I reckon Collingwood.
Okay, Collingwood as well too. Yep.
The third team.
You don't have to have three. You can stop at two if you like.
I'll
If you come up with a third one in a moment, you can as well.
Yeah, I'll just stick with those two for now.
Beautiful. What about you, Nick? Who do you see?
Oh, geez. I'll also go with three teams here at the moment. Again, trying to be as optimistic for us in this sense. Like I said, at least in this sense, structurally, we're probably as good as we've been in the last 7 or 8 years. You know, there is key personnel on the field that helps allow us to play different brand of football. Probably more daring, but one that actually allows us to play down the lines with a lot more confidence in our ball movement too.
Okay.
Second team. Again, this is sacrilegious here. I don't know why, but I think this is probably like a little last hurrah with the personnel for Richmond in this sense.
Mm-hmm.
I think they've got the capabilities to do it. I don't think they will win it, but they've got the potential at least to get into a grand final.
Mm-hmm.
But I can see them falling off next season. And the third team that I do see, again, as a legitimate chance is your boys.
Well,
I do see the D's flying up to making it. It's causing a bit of havoc after a disappointing end to 2022.
Oh, it's really nice to hear.
I'll jump in and say Melbourne would be my third. So I mean, they had a poor finals campaign, but they finished second on the ladder with 16 wins. Like their home and away campaign was very, very strong.
It was a bit of a false economy. I've said it on I think there was a bit of a false economy because even though that they were winning, they weren't winning convincingly. So I don't know. But apparently, once again, I've heard that they've been trading the house down like all other.
Oh, everyone's trading the house down.
Everyone's greatest pre-seasons of their lives.
Exactly right. Everyone's a pre-season champion, and we'll find out this week when the games kick off as well too. So, gentlemen, really quickly, the Salty Bulldog, are we having that? When does that kick off for all your listeners? Because it is the number one podcast bar none. When do you kick off? When can the listeners first get to hear for season 2023?
Geez, that is actually a great question.
We're about an hour and 5 minutes in. If there's people listening right now, you know how good they are.
Yeah,
it's going to be in the next couple of weeks.
We'll be in the next couple of weeks. Yeah, we won't put an exact date, but within the next fortnight, we'll have an episode. We'll tease that we've spent a fair bit of time over the summer working out some new additions to the brand and trying to iron out the logistics of that. Now, obviously, we had, for those who remember, we had Cal Toomey on prior to the draft last year, which was a massive coup, hoping to follow that up with a name of similar stature shortly. But we're still working on that. But yeah, no, certainly within the next fortnight, you're gonna hear us for the first time on our own platform this year.
Magnificent. Well, I'll tell you what, gentlemen, you are an absolute star. This is one of the best conversations I've had with the great thing about us podcasters is that we love doing what we do. We do it for the clubs because we love footy. We're not here to get a headline. We're not here to put our name up in lights or, get a million views on TikTok. It's not about that. It's about just talking about the great game that we love, which is AFL football. So, Western Bulldog supporters, I've got some bad news for you. I've actually got you missing the 8.
Oh.
Yep. And it's because I think that the Dunkley move is going to be a bit of a challenge for you early on to work that out, and it might be a game or so. That's the only thing that holds me back. But down, back, and down forward, you've got weapons at your disposal, and I hope that you come back in 2024 and say, Peps, you're a dickhead, you got it wrong. All right? But most importantly, gentlemen, before we wrap this up, I want to say thank you very much. You guys have been absolute superstars, the Salty Bulldog boys, Matt and Nick. But I have one question for you, gentlemen. I'm aiming this one at you, Matt, and it is simply this. Matt and Nick from the Salty Bulldog, the number one Western Bulldogs podcast this side of the Westgate Bridge. How do you want your footy?
Peps, we want it lace out.
There you go, listeners. Enjoy your day, enjoy your night, enjoy your season. You two, absolute crackers. Have a good one. Thanks for listening to our latest episode. If you haven't done so already, make sure to subscribe, rate, and leave a review on iTunes. I'm your host, Chris Pepper, and with Jamie Wallis, we give you your footy how you want it. Peace out.